methamphetamine's a hell of a drug, you know?
It's a hell of a drug.
And you start doing weird things on methamphetamine. I was afraid, and all of a sudden I had the thought that came from meditation, discontinue thought, focus on breath.
And then some come here and they're sober and they live really good lives. And sometimes we even bring on people that are struggling just to, show that the struggle is real. Today, my special guest is Patt O. Hi,
What up,
Pat.
Pej?
Nice to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
I've had you on before, and back then it was in a smaller setting. Now we got the studio dialed in, and I've really been wanting to have you on. So, Pat, last time that we talked, we obviously heard your story, and we could go over a little bit of that. But I wanted to have some conversations. You've been sober. You just took 21 years, correct?
21 years, the 23rd of October.
Yes.
Pretty mind-blowing.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Yeah. And I think that our last episode was called Being a Sober Father, which you are. And
I am.
Your son's how old now?
16.
16.
16.
Very,
Crushing it.
Crushing hard. And you've got a hell of a story. I mean, I love hearing you talk about your story. I know that you've experienced everything from childhood trauma, everything from drug addiction, alcoholism, psychosis. I think you've done pretty much everything under the sun, right?
Yeah.
Homelessness in Skid Row, Los Angeles.
I do. I like a homeless lifestyle.
A little bit of treatment sprinkled in, a little bit of sober living that didn't turn into sober living.
Yeah.
So as far as, being a man that's 21 years sober now, that has completely transformed his life, and you help so many, and, I wanted to go a little deeper into what we're seeing these days as far as in the recovery world. But, just so that those that haven't seen the past episode, just give us a little synopsis of your upbringing, what happened, and what brought you into the path of recovery.
Synopsis of my life in 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes.
You can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's up to you.
All right.
It's all up to you.
Oh, you don't want it to be up to me, Pej. I could talk like 3 hours. My favorite topic, me.
Yeah. But you know how to gauge you.
I do. Oh my God. You want to hear more about me? No, so I grew up, born and raised South Orange County right here. I actually grew up here before Aliso was Aliso Viejo. Mm-hmm. There was nothing here.
What was there?
It was a hill.
Really?
Yeah, just empty. Pacific Park didn't go all the way through. There was no Aliso Viejo. It ended at, what is that? Alicia down there. And but anyway, so I grew up in this area, predominantly well area, single mother. Always felt less than, never felt good enough. Always felt that people were going to leave. Always had this emptiness on the inside. I think for sure, I mean, I'm grateful that there's so much awareness around mental health, but back then you just kind of stuffed it and kept on trucking,
Yeah.
And so what happened for me along the way was, someone offered me alcohol. And for me, when I drank alcohol, it connected me to other people. It gave me a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. And really, like when it was like in high school and it was cracking and Eazy-E and NWA and Ice Cube was rolling, and
kind of like a sense of power was
lowered trucks. Yeah. Remember the lowered trucks?
There was lowered trucks
with the hydraulic beds and the big old systems.
They had clubs.
Yeah,
there were truck clubs.
Yeah, and we would cruise Bristol. We'd cruise Newport Beach.
Yeah. It was a scene back then.
Whittier Boulevard. Yeah, Cholos. Oh, it was fun. Yeah. And so like that was the time, and graffiti was coming in.
Yeah.
In this area, tag banging was big. And so, little poopy pants, me, and, never been in a fight, but all of a sudden, St. Ides, some weed, and I was gangster,
And what it was St. Ides is what you were drinking?
I love St. Ides. I love Mickey's. Oh, remember the last gulp of the 40?
Yeah.
It was all warm. But you drank anyways,
Sure.
But yeah, malt liquor.
You have an image to portray.
Well, yeah, you had to pour the beer in the curb for the dead homies.
Yeah.
That
weren't even there.
You had to play the part,
Right.
Yeah.
So, You said single mom.
single
Nope.
mom.
Nope. No pops in the
No
picture.
dad. Mom got pregnant in a blackout, and so my whole life up until the day my mom died, I thought that I would never know my dad. I thought I would never have any contact with that. So it's just like, kind of like when I got sober, it's like, look at your resentments.
Mm.
People go, "Well, are you resentful at your dad?" I'm like, "How can you resent someone you never met?" You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, you just learned how to deal with it. Like um, I'd make up all kinds of crazy stories though that like my dad owned this property in South America and he had all these wild animals, and
And that's where he's at?
yeah, that's where he's at because people are like, "Where's your dad?" I'm like, "Oh, he has this leopard.
He's away.
He's away." Because I didn't want to get into, "Hey, I don't have a dad.
Yeah.
Why don't you have a dad?" All that kind of stuff. And so there was that longing for some sort of male authority in my life.
Yeah.
And so when I got involved with my little gang from Mission Viejo, right,
Mhm.
there was that sense of power. There was that sense of like pecking order, um, that I had been seeking my whole life.
Right. And, what kind of student were you growing up in high school, junior high school?
Student.
Good grades? No?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was like the class clown.
Yeah.
I was the kid that was like making fun of everyone. You know, yeah, I mean, I got by. My mom would work full time. The key was under the mat.
Yeah.
I'd go home, get the mat, get the key, pour a box of cereal, and then I'd just go ride my skateboard or my bike with my friends. So school never was really important to me.
Yeah.
By the time I was a freshman at Dana Hills High School, I was asked to leave the school 3 months in. Had enough Saturday schools and detentions to last a whole year.
Mm.
So I was just like, I ended up leaving at the time, and I went and lived with a friend's family in Grass Valley, which is in Northern California, and
Mhm.
his parents were really strict, and ended up getting straight A's that year. Like you had to go to school, come home, do your homework before you could do anything.
Right.
And so when you have structure, you seem to do well,
Yes.
right?
And I think sometimes kids actually want structure,
Yeah. Feel safe,
they just don't know how to ask for it,
right?
or it's not provided in some.
Or is it even their responsibility?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So, you went there for, what, a year and then you came back?
I was there for a year. I was struggling. My mom was lesbian. My mom was in an unhealthy relationship. The woman smacked me. I didn't know that she was lesbian. It wasn't like in today's time, like nobody talked about it.
It was kind of
It
unspoken.
was a secret,
Yeah.
And so this lady hit me, and so I was like, told my mom it's either her or me, and I ended up leaving to go live with my friend's family. And so when I came back, my mom was with somebody else, and they had bought a house in Mission Viejo, and then that's when I moved in. And so I really struggled with that in my life. What you thought of me, you know, um, and then my dad not there, and
Yeah.
then my group of friends, my little gang was like, I don't need anybody. So student, I didn't even, I would go to school, but I never do any homework. I failed tests.
Yeah.
It was just all about like getting spare change in high school to get drunk after school,
Mhm.
smoke weed, start selling weed for San Juan, for a little gang down San Juan, then start selling cocaine for those guys.
They did
And
have little gangs in San Juan
they
and San
did.
Clemente back
Yeah,
then.
and they fought all the time.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, so then they were like our backup, and we would tag everywhere and sell cocaine, and then I found LSD. And there was this guy, Oatmeal was his name, and he rode a scooter, a little moped scooter, and he would just meet you like at, let's say, the movie theater, right
Right.
out front, not around the corner, out front, and he would just open up a comic book and flip through the comic book, and there'd be like a 10 pack of acid in there, and he would rip it off right in front of everyone, like no big deal. And like and so I found acid, and then I started selling acid, and then I just started dosing everybody. You know what I mean? If you
Well,
left your drink by me,
you put it in there.
all the time, all the time, and people would start frying. What the hell's wrong with me? You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's just the guy I was. I mean, it wasn't about school. It was about the party. It was about my friends. It was about having a better
Just
time,
fucking around.
fucking around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who needs school?
Did you graduate high school?
I did not graduate high school.
Did you end up taking, like, a GED or going to any one of those
Uh, when I
side
was
schools?
when I was 21, I needed to get sober.
Right.
But it wasn't like I need to get sober, like go to 12-step fellowship sober. It was I need to move to San Francisco and if you buy me get me an apartment there, and I'll go to school and I'll work."
As in, like, if you mom get me
Yes.
that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, mom.
So mom was kind of being involved in your life again.
Yes.
You're asking her to do stuff for you that
Yes.
looks good for her.
Yeah, so at 17, I decided to move out. I thought I was kicked out of the house. I decided to leave, and I lived on friends' couches, and then I had a '74 Hornet. I traded it for a '69 Chevy van. I was living in my van, and it ended up getting towed away. There was graffiti pieces on it, and so Mission Viejo police didn't like it,
Yeah.
right? So they towed it. Then I'm, like, homeless. I meet a girl, and I'm like, "This isn't good. This isn't working out." So I decided to go to San Francisco. I'm gonna get sober. I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna get a job because I just need a normal life.
Yeah.
Like, right? I grew up this bad lifestyle that I grew up, and
Mhm.
if I just have these things, then I should be all right. And so I did. I moved to San Francisco. My mom got me this apartment in the Tenderloin, and better than the
Oh,
Tenderloin?
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Was it
Turk and
run
Hyde.
down then?
It was very run down.
Even then?
And in the daytime, you couldn't really tell. It just looked like downtown.
Yeah.
But then the sun started coming down, and then the
And
crack
the
pipe
freaks
was
come
out.
out.
Yeah, oh, the
Yeah.
freaks come out at night.
Yeah.
Freaks come out at night. And
Yes.
so the crack pipe's hitting, you know what I mean? And I'm like, "Mom, this probably isn't good," And she's like, "We already signed the lease. Like, there's
So
nothing we
you're
can
not
do."
even into doing these street drugs with street people yet?
Yet, no. Nah, but it's on the way.
But you told mom, like, "This isn't a good idea," and she's like, "We gotta keep you there?"
Yeah, like I took my first hit of crack at 17 when I left the house that night at right here on Crown Valley and Greenfield.
Mhm. People were smoking crack
Yeah,
around
in an
there today?
abandoned house, rocking it up,
I mean, it was the '80s,
rocking it
right?
up. Well,
Yeah.
that was the '90s, but
The '90s at
not
this
that
point?
old. I'm not as old as you, Paige.
4 years behind me, don't
I'm
even
just kidding.
trip.
And so, yeah, and so, but yeah, when that the Tenderloin, I was like 60 days clean and sober, I guess. I mean, just
Just
absent.
being sober without any
Yeah,
kind of.
I got a GED in that time.
Oh, you got it
So
during that
GED,
time?
because that was your question. I got the GED.
Yes.
Went to City College to be a chef.
Mhm.
I had plans and dreams. You know what I mean? I was gonna do it, and one day I was just like, I think I'm gonna get some weed down at the old civic center because weed's not bad.
No.
It's an herb. You know what I'm saying?
It's San Francisco.
Dude,
It
it's
goes
medicine.
hand in hand.
Comes from the earth, bro.
Totally.
And so I did. I got a little 10 bag of weed, and 2 days later, I got a 22-ounce St. Pauli's Girl because that's not malt liquor.
Mhm.
And then, dude, within like 2 months, I was smoking heroin, um, smoking crack cocaine.
How were you supporting your habit? Were you working?
At that time, I was working. I worked several different places in San Francisco, and the rave scene was cracking. I mean,
You were going to raves up there
oh
then?
my God, the Wicked crew out of San
Oh,
Francisco
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
awesome. I remember Carlos from Seattle would come, Donald Glod,
Yeah.
DJ Dan,
Garth and Yano and all that?
Jason. Yeah, that's a Wicked crew. Yeah,
It's the
Yarth,
Wicked Crew.
Yano, Marky, Thomas. Oh man, it was fun. It was a good time. Like,
Right.
we're just partying. A lot of ecstasy, a lot of LSD. My favorite.
Right.
Nothing like I mean, acid and ecstasy. I mean, just kind of
A little candy flipping
candy
action going up
flipping.
in San Francisco in the '90s. I mean,
Yeah,
what else could you ask for?
that's it.
That was the scene.
I living the dream.
That was living the dream.
It really was a good time.
So then, something happened. I think you were working somewhere and something really bad happened. You want to talk about that?
Which part?
Well, I think you were.
Was it like
We
a
were working with.
legitimate job?
Yeah, I think you were working with kids.
Oh, with the kiddos. That's a tough one.
Do you not want to talk about it?
Yeah, I'm always willing to talk about it. But when it's presented, you're like, oh my God, that hurts.
Oh yeah. But when you're really lost in your addiction.
Yeah, so at this time in my life, like the party was done. There was no raves. There was no I mean, I was on the Tenderloin.
How old were you then?
mm,
22, 23?
25
Oh, already.
ish.
So you were up there for a little bit.
25. I was up there for a long time. 8 years,
Hmm.
6, 7, 8 years.
Wow.
8 years. So
You were up there that long.
yeah, so I had met a girl who brought me into her house to take care of, like, to clean me up.
Yeah.
And we fell in love. Like, I don't know how it was for you, but uh, she cleaned me up. I detoxed 3 days, 4 days on her couch, fed me, bought me new clothes,
Detox off of heroin that you were
heroin
smoking?
and crack cocaine at that time. And yeah, so detox and clean me up, and, I was like a what would you call it? Like a lazy user.
Yeah,
She's going to work and I'm chilling on the couch,
yeah,
and then she eventually is like, "Yo, you need to get a job." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Dude, you need to stop nagging."
yeah,
You know what I mean? That was my attitude. Like I was just such a taker.
yeah.
And so I knew like the time was up, like I was gonna have to leave. And so I was like, well, I'll go try to get a job.
Mhm.
And so and my whole life, like when I lived down here, my mom put me in the YMCA, and I became a counselor, and I
Mm.
was like assistant director for camps and YMCA stuff. So I went to go to YMCA,
Right.
and I was 50 days clean and sober, and I got an assistant director job at an after school program, YMCA elementary school program, 50 days clean and sober from heroin and crack cocaine.
But you're the only one that knew that you were that many days sober.
Ish. And this is ish. You know what I mean? We're guesstimating
Yeah,
because it's a bit of a blur.
yeah.
We're about 50, maybe, 60, 45, 40,
Mhm,
and 50 anyway. So I get this job as the assistant director at an after school elementary school program.
mhm.
And I go to the elementary school and day one, and there's like, I don't know, 100 kids, 200 kids, and they love Patt Ochoa. You know what I mean? I could balance chairs on my chin. You've seen me balance,
Yes, you have.
yeah, ladder on my
Many things.
chin. And so they love me. They're like, "Oh my God, balance his broom, balance all these things," and playing volleyball with them. And I went home that night, and I was like grateful. You know what I mean? I was like, "Holy cow!" Like I had purpose. I had a job. I had a place to live. I had a girlfriend, and I was grateful, man. I was like, "Dude, I'm gonna be sober the rest of my life. This is it." And the next day, I went to work. Same kids love me. I love them. Went home, kissed my girlfriend, thanked her for my life. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for bringing me back to life. And then the third day, I showed up to work, and I remember I was pushing this kid on a swing, and the kid was like, "Pat, faster, faster." And all of a sudden, I had this thought was like, boom, just came across me. It was like, man, a bag of heroin. It's a good
Just like
idea.
that.
Just like that. Bing. And there was no like, probably not a good idea. There was no like, hey, like
Absolutely not.
you're
Yeah.
taking care of kids.
Right.
Nothing like that,
Didn't
dude.
even think about that.
Didn't even think about it. I walked off. I called the Connect. He brought me a bag of heroin, a pint of tequila, and a needle. And I went into the elementary school bathroom, and I shot up in that elementary school bathroom where there's kids at, and I nodded out on the toilet. And I just remember coming to, and the director of that program like grabbing me by the collar, fucking pulling me out of that bathroom.
Pissed.
Oh, bro, pissed like effing me this, effing me that. Get the F off this property. You have 10 minutes.
Get
Like,
out of
I'm
here.
calling the cops. You have 10 minutes. Get the hell out of here. And I remember just like taking off running, and like, just like, what did you do? Like, what happened? I didn't know what happened. Like, I was happy, joyous, and free, purposeful life. Next minute, loaded.
Mhm.
And my whole world just crumbled. You know what I mean? She was over it. She kicked me out. No job.
Lost everything.
Lost everything. And, I mean, it wasn't really mine. I mean, looking back, but like to me at that time, yeah, I lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's when I called my mom, and I was like, I need help. And so she sent me to treatment, Betty Ford.
And, how many times did you go to treatment in your life?
One time, my mom told me you can go to treatment once.
Right.
After that, I'm not saying another treatment center.
And as far as treatment goes, there was some shenanigans and you ended up
I fell in love.
yeah, you fell in love and you didn't, really take the treatment seriously.
I mean, I took the treatment as serious as I mean, I thought I did.
Yeah,
I thought I was in the game.
yeah.
I thought you can take treatment serious and be in love in treatment, right?
Rehab romance.
Oh, dude, it was real love. It was like the same sobriety date kind of love.
Like that.
Oh, dude, that counselor Mark was talking about God's will, bro, and I was like, totally. Girlfriend, recovery,
God created this.
Hawaii
Yeah.
to go to sober living. with the girlfriend, dude, it was oh, I was blissful.
And how long were you in treatment until you were supposed to both go to sober living in Hawaii?
28 days treatment.
Is that it?
Yeah, 28 days only. They wanted me to do aftercare, and so that's why I asked the girl, like, "Where should we go to sober living?"
And of all places, Hawaii.
Well, yeah, it's pretty romantic too,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So you're on the plane and
drank,
drank right away?
done. Yeah, well, because alcohol is not a problem if you're a heroin addict.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You could drink alcohol if you're a heroin addict. Because I was a dope fiend. I was an alcoholic.
So how many did you drink?
A lot. I don't know, 12, 13.
Threw a few back and then
Fucking next thing you know, landing in Hawaii, all of a sudden they're like, "Well, I got a funny story you never heard." One time I was in San Francisco and I called my mom to get sober. And so she's like, "Hey, if you're gonna get sober, you gotta get sober down here." So I was like, "All right, okay, cool." And so she bought me a plane ticket back to Los Angeles from San Francisco.
Mhm.
So well, I need $200. I need $200 to get to the airport, And so she, sure enough, wired me $200. I got $100 worth of crack cocaine and $100 worth of heroin for the plane ride to go get sober.
Wow.
And so I take the bus to the BART and then the BART over the bay and I hit the bathroom, take a couple crack rips, take a couple heroin, because then I smoked heroin. Smoke because it's not addictive if you smoke it. And
Mhm.
so I smoked it, and then I gotta I get to the airport, I get the crack and I get the heroin through the security,
Mm.
and the plane takes off, and I go, I gotta get to the bathroom, you know what I mean? And so they're like, okay, you can use the restroom, it's free to get up. So I go to the bathroom and I get the toilet roll and I fill it with toilet paper with soap. I take a crack rip in the plane and then blow it through the thing, right? Because you can't smell it. I don't know if you can, but and so, dude, took a crack rip, took a heroin rip, took a crack rip, took a heroin rip, took a crack rip. All of a sudden, it's an hour and 15-minute plane ride. All of a sudden, the captain goes, "All right, the time is up. Everybody needs to be back to their seats." And I had been in the bathroom for 45 minutes smoking crack and heroin all the way on my way to treatment or wherever I
Yeah,
was
those
going.
laboratories are not that big.
No, they're little, right? You're just
Yeah.
like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Oh man. And yeah, I didn't make it to treatment. I got off the plane and went downtown to get more crack, and well, you know the deal. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I ended up in Hawaii. You know what I mean? And she ended up overdosing and dying, and I never saw her again after that.
And did you last long in Hawaii or did you come back to the States?
I went straight to the bar, and then I found ice.
Which there was a lot of that
It
there.
was just coming out, right? It
Yeah.
was ice was the thing. And I wasn't gonna do heroin, so I did a line of ice at the bar,
Mhm.
and I think I was there like maybe 3 or 4 months.
Oh, you were?
Living in Honolulu, out on the streets in Honolulu.
On the streets?
Well, yeah, easy to be homeless and
Yeah, it's not hard.
like, there's a lot of tourists,
Yeah, you're never gonna get pulled at night.
hustle. No,
No.
hustling, it was easy to hustle.
Yeah.
But I started to go to 12-step fellowships, in
You
and out.
did out there?
I did, but I was an addict, I wasn't alcoholic.
Yeah, you were different.
I was different, and
Yeah.
so I ended up coming my mom got me a plane ticket back to LA, and I went straight down. That's when I went straight to Skid Row.
And how long did you live in Skid Row?
I mean, I survived, what, I don't know, year and a half-ish, maybe?
Where would you sleep at night?
I wouldn't sleep at night because it was too dangerous to sleep at night.
And in the
So
day?
hustle all day and then find somewhere off the grid to sleep. Um, or you just pass out when you pass out. You know what I mean?
Any tents or anything
Any,
like that?
I would be. I'd get the luxury to be in a tent. I don't know like how your mind works, but
Yeah,
I'm always better than or less than, right?
yeah,
And so I'm in a tent and I think, fuck, those guys in the cardboard box, man, they're losers.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And then I'd get the cardboard box, I'd lose a tent and I'd get a cardboard box and
yeah.
I'd think, man, one day I hope I get a tent. And but yeah, but sometimes you just I remember with a meth shot, dude, and just
Mm.
knowing I'm about to go down, 7 days in, 8 days, I'm about to go down and I go to hit it, and I just nod out right there.
Well, before we get into that, so you said before you were smoking heroin.
Yeah.
At this point, what did you start shooting substances in Skid Row during that experience?
So before I went to Hawaii, I had an ex-girlfriend that went to treatment, started shooting dope with this guy. I was smoking meth in Hollywood, and then we connected, and she was shooting up, and so I got mad at her, and then
because you were against that.
because I was against that, and she's like, "You want to try it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure,"
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah.
And then she would give me any, and so I just took the rig and I started shooting to myself, and I was shooting meth mostly at the time, and then heroin to come down. So by the time I was in Skid Row, it was just all of it.
And then at some point I mean, that's a year and a half on Skid Row is a long time.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any I mean, you went into psychosis after a while? Was there ever thought in your head like, "This isn't right. I gotta get out of here"?
The paranoia. Um, yeah, I mean, I didn't know it was psychosis. I don't need. I mean, that's I pause when you ask because I don't. It was my reality.
Yeah, you it almost that becomes your reality, so you don't really know.
So like at one point, like I was in Las Vegas, and I was pimping this guy out to my dealer, my speed dealer,
Uh-huh.
and so my speed dealer started giving me an 8 ball of meth for every straight guy I brought to him. And so the first guy that I brought, me and my dealer ended up hog tying him, stealing his he had like a Jeep truck, putting him in the back of his own truck, took him to Vegas, and and
Jesus Christ, you
and
could get
so
in
I
a lot of trouble for that.
ended up like I was in the desert, and I had a shovel,
Yeah.
and I was digging a hole, and I was convinced that I was digging. There was like 10 of us, and we were digging our grave for the cartel. And I had bounced, like I got away somehow, and some guy picked me up on the highway and brought me back to the strip.
Hmm.
Now, was it real? It was my reality at the time,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Like, and I was emailing my mom and my aunts and all them, and they kind of were like, "This kid's bumped his head." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's lying. And so my cousin ended up picking me up and made me dump all my needles and all my stuff, and she bought me a 12-pack of beer and put me on a bus back to LA, um,
From Vegas.
from Vegas. And so, was it a psychosis? You know? Yeah, I was paranoid, you know what I mean? One time, my speed dealer was, they had him on this witch compound.
Mhm.
These bats were chasing witch. It was, yeah, crazy stuff, you know what I mean? Like, methamphetamine's a hell of a drug, you
Yeah,
know?
it's a hell of a drug.
And you start doing weird things on methamphetamine, right? My sexual behavior and content started shifting, right? Like I started like, I'm straight, and next thing you know, like I'm picking flowers with this. It looked like a girl, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it wasn't, And when I came to Hollywood and what is that, La Brea, and there's a little bar right there. It's called, I want to say the Boiler or something, but and I come out of a blackout,
Mhm.
right? Like making out with this man, and it's like that shame, right? Like, and but you just keep going.
You know, I
And so I'm like confused. I'm like, I don't like this, but it's
yeah. I told you I made a video a while back that I was criticized by some people
yeah,
saying that I was homophobic because I had brought up, "Can some substances make you change your sexual preference?" And, people suddenly said, "No, that it doesn't happen like that, and why is Pej speaking like that?" But I always thought about you and your story, and then I also had some other friends back in the day. For crack, when it came to crack, they would do things. They would straight up I mean, guys that got all the women suddenly became a whole different guy, and they would go and suck some dick for crack, straight up. I mean, it's just what people did.
right,
So, it's interesting to hear this, because I know where your brain can go when you're on certain types of substances, especially meth. Especially meth. Meth takes you to other realms of the universe within your mind that is just total clusterfuck.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think I've heard you talk about it before. I think at one point you were on a street corner with some kind of antenna or with
yeah. I thought I was like
talking to the aliens.
yeah, it was like this like light beam came out of my head, and it was like I was like channeling information,
Yeah.
right? Like I was like from like the normal people, like all this information. I could get information from you without you speaking, and then it would like compute, and then I would get information back down, and
Mm.
then I would have conversations with you, and you'd be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, it was like a sentence on a sentence on a sentence on a sentence on a sentence,
Mhm.
and, like, 1 and 3 connected and 3 and 5 connected. You know what I'm saying? And it didn't make any sense to you, but it would make complete
Complete
sense,
sense to you.
right? And
Yes.
then I would talk to you, and you would understand the 3rd sentence, and then I would bring that person in to get you to it was like and
I
so
understand.
was it psychosis? I it was my reality at the
Right.
time, right? And so, yeah, um, yeah,
But
twisted.
so after a year and a half of being out there, you ended up, getting sober how much longer after?
Oh, I got sober at 27
Okay,
on
so
the
that's
23rd of October.
very young. 27 is a very young age to get sober.
I think it's young.
I mean, these days we see a lot of other younger people
Right,
getting sober, which is remarkable,
right,
especially for the ones that stay sober.
right,
But obviously, you had some turning points and some things that happened and people that came and got
right.
you, and you didn't get sober in a traditional treatment center.
I did not.
It was a
It's a detox. They called
detox.
it a detox.
Yeah, but it wasn't really like
It was
detox meds,
basically
no
like
nurse,
no
nothing like that.
no meds, no nurses. Guys from a 12-step fellowship showed up,
Indigent.
indigent. They had committees. So it was like a different committee would come, and then yeah, they had a guy that cooked food, and if you went into a seizure, 911, they'd come pick you up, take you to the hospital. It was 10 days for free, and I just shook. I mean, I was like, "There's a bed. Good luck. Hope you can make it."
You were in your rawest form,
Rawest form.
and people rallied around you and helped you and showed you recovery. And what is it that made you actually really decide, "I gotta do this 100%?" Because a lot of people don't.
Honestly, I don't think I ever decided that. Like, I didn't ever consciously make a decision that, "You know what? I'm gonna be sober, and I'm gonna do this." I remember one day I've had a couple years, like, and I was like, maybe almost 5 years, and I was driving down the street, and I was like, "I actually think I'm, like, really in this." You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think I'm really in this recovery thing, like, I'm doing everything, I'm super busy, I'm super active. Like, I think I'm in this. I'm working in treatment, I'm active in 12-step fellowships.
Yeah.
I think I'm really in this thing.
Yeah.
I don't think there wasn't a point where I made a decision. Um, and when I tell my story, I tell you the story in retrospect, looking back
Yes.
at these significant things that happened. I didn't know it was significant at the time.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Like I'm not sure I even believe that I make a decision that I'm gonna be sober. Like I believe I was surrendered on the 23rd of October of 2002. How many times did I try to get sober and couldn't get sober? How many times did I make a decision to do this and I didn't?
Yeah, but even in those 5 years that up until you, like, realized, "Oh my god, I'm in this," you could have been the same guy that was attempting to always get sober and went back and relapsed, but you didn't.
And that's what I mean is that I believe that I was surrendered. I believe that there was a
Surrendered without even knowing you were surrendered.
correct. There was
Yeah.
a spirit that moved me in a direction. We call it God, whatever you want to call that power, is that there was a shift that happened on the 23rd of October in retrospect, looking back. Um, I came to prostituting myself for one more hit of crack cocaine to an ugly dude, but it wasn't any uglier than the dude before
Mhm.
and the dude before, right? 3 days before I was sexually assaulted for the 12th time and I was going to kill myself. And that day I had a thought to drink alcohol. I drank alcohol. I believe it saved my life because I blacked out for 3 days.
Mhm.
And when I came to that 3 days later on the 23rd, my mind always, I look over, I'm like shame, guilt, remorse, fear,
Yes.
hate,
All that.
right? And usually the first thought is, get the hell out of here, get a pint of tequila, let's go, right? And that morning, I just had this thought was like, call your mom and ask for help. Like there was literally something moved in me. And I did, and that's when I went to the detox, you know what I mean? And I had a guy there at that detox who loved me unconditionally.
Mhm.
Like, in retrospect, I can look back and tell you that that unconditional love that we have for each other here, and it wasn't like all like, "Oh, everything's gonna be great," you know, "Oh, I love you. We love you until you love yourself." No, it was like
Direct.
it was direct. It
Yeah.
was like, "This is what you're going to do." You know what I mean? It was no, like, suggestion, right? But that's the same guy that was direct was the same guy that literally put me in a shower and scrubbed my back,
Mhm.
right? It was the same guy that picked me up and took me to a meeting. The same guy that picked me up and bought me a meal, right? It was the same guy that took my old clothes and threw them away and gave me brand new clothes.
It's the type of service that we see done in recovery that we see it's rare now. Like, you still see some people that really look out for somebody that's new, that's raw, that's hurting, but, like, when I hear it, I understand it because I had some good people around me that loved me like that. I needed them to be direct, but they also proved that they loved me too.
And this is just my opinion, right? We banter and we talk a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
about this kind of stuff, and to like take that shift, and is I really believe that the amount of treatment centers, insurance based programs, right, has really changed
The way to help people.
the way that like when I was given it, it was unconditional love. It was for fun and for free,
Mhm.
right? There was no financial anything tied to that. That guy was going to save my life because he had to save his own life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there was nothing for him to gain. It was that true spiritual spirit helping spirit, right? And I believe that that's the only place where money and spirituality mix is in that basket,
Mhm.
right? Like it's not like and I'm not against treatment. I mean, you know, I've worked in treatment for 19 years,
Me and you worked in treatment
right?
with us.
Together,
Yeah,
right? And so it's about, and I believe that treatment can still provide that same
sure.
love, but I think that I don't see it often.
I actually it's interesting because I
Oh wait, and so real quick,
go ahead.
it's changed a lot of 12-step meetings in the area because it's so inundated with.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, often when I hear your story, I relate so much because I think both of our moms were getting educated almost identical, like, the way that my mom talked to me on the phone. Your mom sent people for you. My mom pretty much told me I was dead to her, and I told her, like, "What are they teaching you in your classes?" I didn't even know, like, "Who's educating you? Like, why are you talking to me like you never talked to me like this?"
Right.
But when she told me, and this one pierced my heart, I haven't had my son since he was an adolescent before he was an adolescent. I don't know what this is.
Right.
Um, and then you know where I went. I went and got sober at a place where I'd already met the guy 5 years before.
Right.
But this time, you know, they say when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. The teacher was there 5 years before. I just wasn't ready.
Right.
And and so he came at me with the same type of love. He was assertive. He was direct, but he was just a big ball of love. God rest his soul. He died a few months back.
That's right.
I watched him on his deathbed. But so I remember when I was a newcomer, I would see you places. There was certain places we would meet up, the old romper room or
Yeah.
places like that. And you were this guy that you seemed like you were comfortable in your skin and you had like a nice group of people around you and you guys all seemed like you were friends. And we went to a dance in Yorba Linda one time,
Oh yeah.
right? It
At
was
the old
like,
Nixon Library.
yes. And you always wore hoodies and you still do, right?
I
And
almost one
you
of them.
were one of the most welcoming people to me in the beginning of my recovery process. You had what, I think 7 years or something like that. And then we started comparing notes and we realized that we knew the same
Mm,
people. So that means we were partying in the same places. We were majorly in the rave scene.
right.
And, and then over the years, you know, you said you worked in treatment, and then I went to school. I wanted to work in treatment, and we ended up working together at an adolescent
Yeah.
facility,
Newport Academy.
Newport Academy, and it was really interesting to be there and see, like, that was, like, the first time I ever heard of, like, I mean, I'm at the time probably, like, 38, 39 years old, seeing a 14-year-old kid come in talking about smoking pills. Like, oh, they did that. We never did that. I don't remember ever smoking pills, right?
Right.
But at the time, there was pills to be smoked, like them Oxy 80s and shit
Yeah.
like that. And so it was pretty alarming to see that, but also I just wanted to be there. And it was always really great to work alongside you, sitting in clinical meetings and being on the front lines and working with the adolescent females, adolescent males. I knew that was your specialty too, like was to work with the kids.
Mm.
You had a special way of being able to connect with kids. And at the end of the day, kids are the most important things. I also watched you like throughout my sobriety have a kid, right? I think he was one when I was a newcomer, and I've watched him grow up now to be a 16-year-old. And you being a father for especially for a guy that didn't really have a real father figure for yourself, being really like an upstanding father for your son. And I've seen your son be alongside you, tell your story so many different places, and he never went down that road. I think that's remarkable. It's wonderful, you know. Um, we often have conversations, you and I, about what we see. I mean, we California sober is just, I think, at this point, kind of a just kind of a joke term. It's like, listen, bro, you want to smoke weed, you just want to smoke weed. Great, you call yourself sober, you call yourself sober. But something that's we talk about sometimes, you know, I've been, I won't even say ostracized, just criticized by the harm reduction community. They think that when I speak a certain way, I am putting people's lives at risk, right? And a lot of people won't speak on this because a lot of people, and myself, we want to respect many paths of recovery and not just think that the one that we got sober on is like the end all be all. Like there's refuge recovery, there's smart recovery, there's the 12-step world. There's so many different styles of recovery, so many flavors, if you will, right? Um, but like I always wonder about, you know, people that are stuck on methadone that go to the clinic that show up on like they have to be there at a certain time. They're always standing in line. Their dosage starts at a low dosage, and then all of a sudden it goes all the way up. And there's many reasons why their dosage goes up. They know what it is. The clinic knows what it is. The doctor knows what it is. But when you hear of a person that's on like, and I've seen this, I think you've seen it. I mean, in the mid 100 dosages, that's like one thing. But for somebody to be like on fucking 270 milligrams of methadone, and then finally they get to a point in their life where they want to change their life. First of all, it's so hard to find a place that's going to actually detox you off that. And secondly, when you do go to watch them go through that process, it's almost like witnessing someone that needs an exorcism because they feel like they want to jump out of their skin. They're screaming, they're yelling, all this stuff. So I think to myself, why should some human beings stay stuck on certain medications for long periods of time and be neglected of the fact of trying to find themselves in a completely abstinent state of mind? What are your thoughts on this?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot there. First of all, like, harm reduction is great. You know what I mean? If I'm a full blown heroin addict, right, and I'm robbing and I'm stealing and I'm doing these things to get heroin, and I get put on Suboxone, and I'm able to go back to work, and I stop stealing and I stop doing these things, right? My life has gotten better. The community has gotten better,
Safer.
safer, right? With me
You're not
on
harming yourself
I'm
or
not
the
harming
community. Yeah,
me or the
community.
community. And so it's great. Um, Now, from my chair, right? I was in the beginning stages of Suboxone
I remember
when it was they were testing
they were
it,
testing it.
and we would go to the Haight Ashbury Clinic to get our bupe dose.
Okay.
We
You
call
were
it
getting that
we
then?
were calling bupes, and you'd go and
Because
you
that would be over 21 years ago.
yeah this was in 90 96 97,
Mhm.
and you'd go to the little group, then you go get your medicine. Well, I'm a junkie. So what did I do? Do you think I took my dose? No, I saved it. And then I went back and then I said, "Oh yeah, I relapsed." And they would add like a group and a one-on-one, and they were taking data. They were collecting data. They were collecting data. So they had enough data to go to the United States government in order to prove that this is effective. People's lives changed, which us in the treatment world never collected data,
That's
right?
usually the argument that people from harm reduction community have with me is
They
that the
have
data
they
shows,
have data. They have data, right?
but see, we're here on the front lines watching this like with our own eyes, how it's affecting.
But our mistake is that we never collected data.
uh,
You see what I mean? So we couldn't argue with, right? So now us that are in the front lines doing treatment the way we do treatment, we can't really do treatment like that anymore because Suboxone has then now come into our facilities. I own a detox residential, Liberty House Recovery. We will detox using Suboxone. I think it's a
which is
great
typically
it's a
used.
great detox
Mhm.
off of fentanyl, off of heroin. Well, not really much heroin anymore, right? And to get you to a place where now my responsibility as a treatment center is to stabilize you physically, mentally, emotionally,
Mhm.
and to try to get you in touch with some sort of spiritual movement, whatever that may be for that individual,
Yeah.
right? If when I put bupe into my body, I shut myself off from any sort of spirituality. And this is just me and
What you
personally
believe,
my experience in my own life.
because you've tried.
I have tried it,
Yeah.
right? I've been on it, and I shut myself off from any sort of help outside of this medication. And I needed to be on that medication and get my dose in order for me to be okay. And if I didn't have that, then I wasn't okay physically, mentally, emotionally, right? I was tied to something, right? In an abstinent based world connected to spiritual life, I am 100% free all of the time. So my question is do you want to be tied to something the rest of your life, or do you want to be free? And
Right.
what is it that you want, right? If you want that, then I'll put your hand into someone's hand that has that experience, that believes in that methodology, right? So that you can get the life that you need to get, right? I don't need to fight it.
Right.
I don't need to fight you. This is how I stand. This is my experience. This is where I believe. You like it? I don't. I want to be on 24 milligrams of Suboxone.
Right. And the good thing is that these days there are actually people that are okay with working with those people.
Yeah,
When I talk about working with them, I don't mean in a treatment
I
setting.
understand.
I mean in a spiritual setting.
Correct.
There are people that 12-step sponsors that are fine with people being on Suboxone and going through the process. Nice. They tell me. They tell me they've taken people through the steps. I give them their number.
Yeah,
No
right.
problem. Here, talk to him.
It's great.
Some of them are on it, some of them aren't, but some of them may have had an experience that I wasn't there to witness to see whether it worked or not. Either way. And if it's keeping them from doing heroin or fentanyl or other things like that, all the better.
For
Uh,
sure. But you and I both know 12-step fellowship, we share experience, strength, and hope,
mhm.
right? Which means I don't have experience in that, so I cannot help you,
Right,
right? It's not about my opinion, it's about, right, I have experience with that or I don't.
right.
And if I know, like, Joe, for example, I don't know a Joe,
Yeah,
but I don't even know anyone does that isn't a 12-step fellowship. That I don't know. I'm glad you do. I'll bring them to you.
yeah,
But for me personally, I can't help you.
mhm,
It's not my experience.
yeah.
You know, I'm gonna give you the experience of abstinence, spiritual life, freedom.
Okay, with that said, now I wanted to talk a little bit about the countless overdoses, the increase that we've seen. I mean, I'm 16 and a half years sober, you're 21 years sober. There wasn't people on fentanyl back then. There was people on heroin. There was people overdosing on heroin. It wasn't like this. Yes, there was overdoses, but nothing like this. These days, quite often, when we hear of somebody dying at a young age, without even seeing an autopsy report or really knowing how it happened, it's rare that someone drank themselves to death. It happens. It's a possibility. But usually, like it goes right back to fentanyl, and fentanyl's in so many different things. You got the blues, the oxys, right? The even fake Xanax, even laced in meth and laced in cocaine, and then there's straight fentanyl. I mean, straight like off the rocks,
And
straight
just to add in there,
powder.
we just buried 2 16-year-old kids, marijuana-laced fentanyl. So they overdosed on fentanyl that was laced in the weed. So they thought they were smoking weed, which
Mhm.
they were, but it was laced with fentanyl. So now we're in a whole nother bracket of lacing.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that kids these days aren't just. We used to call it bud, now they call it flower.
Right,
They're not just smoking traditional flower.
right,
Like there are some people that like to smoke pot, like smoke bud.
right,
But the stuff that's out there these days is things like carts, uh, weed pens,
right. You're looking at 90% THC levels.
wax, concentrate, and then there's the counterfeit carts that the kids that can't buy it from a dispensary per se will find it on the dark web or the plug or whoever's got the hookup, and then they're getting their hands on stuff that could potentially in the cart have more than just THC.
Correct,
Somebody's putting fentanyl in it, which is
correct.
making it more addictive. Um, and it's amazing. Like I've done interventions on straight up tweakers. I'm talking like straight up meth heads. That's all they ever did. Telling me that they're kicking like they're on opiates. I'm like, because your shit's probably got fentanyl in it. And then later on, when you put the person in detox and they test them, oh, you got fentanyl in your system. I never did fentanyl. Like, actually, probably did.
Right.
So, with that said, like we could sit here and say, how do we prevent this? How do we get in front of this? It's not going away. It's just not going away. I mean, the way that it's been, where it comes from, the way it's mass produced, the way it's distributed, the way that we see it. I mean, it's in every state in our country. Every single, we've had people from Maine and Delaware and states you don't even really ever hear of, like people living much, right? Coming to treatment and saying that it's in their state. I mean, Ohio had such a
Mm.
high heroin overdose rate like 5 years ago. Now it's just become fentanyl. Um, when you hear of friends of ours or just even acquaintances or people that are dying and overdosing from it, have you become desensitized to the way it makes you feel because it's so common, or do you feel every single time for every single one of them?
It's a great question. To be honest with you, Pej, being in recovery, for the years I have is I don't know if it's jaded or I'm just really blocked on who I let in to my emotional playground.
Right.
And so I can help unconditionally
Hmm.
from a place of love, but not opening myself up emotionally, right? Until later on down the line, right? When I'm
Yeah.
working with a guy and he's doing a ninth step amends, then I allow them maybe into my more personal life
Hmm.
where I am then opening up emotionally, right? And I've had to learn how to do that, right? To navigate
Hmm.
the suicides, to navigate, right, the overdoses, to navigate these things where I don't have, it's just like now it's come for me. It's like, oh my God, like another one. Oh my God, like another one. Like, oh man, I was going for that guy. I was really cheering that guy on, you
Yeah.
know. And so I don't think it has the really deep kick emotionally for me. But when I do let someone in and there's a relapse, then I get to feel
The pain of
the
losing them.
pain. And the reality is man, I mean, I hate to say it, but not all of us are staying sober.
No, you're right. Not all of us are.
Even people with time. I mean, I'm one elbow blend away from a drink, right? And
Hmm.
there's no doubt in my mind that I will drink again if I don't maintain the things that I do on a daily basis, And so for me, step one is really, really important to me.
Absolutely. It was interesting during the, pandemic where we would see so many people from the recovery community that were in 20 they had 20 and 30 years of sobriety relapse.
For sure.
The whole world changed.
Yeah.
Everything changed. People didn't know how to actually be confined in their homes and still stay comfortable in their skin. Now, it did bring a lot of us in the recovery community together too.
Right.
We made countless friends worldwide that we
Right.
probably would have never met. I mean, we were, you know, interacting with people in India, in like
Yeah.
in Iran, in
Right. Japan.
Stockholm, Sweden, Japan, having like if somebody wanted us
Right.
to share a
Right.
story there,
We did.
having interpreters there after
Sure.
like every few sentences. So that was interesting. But I saw a lot of people fall off.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't, we don't talk about it enough, like,
I think it created a lot of mental health.
yeah, for sure. What, the pandemic? Oh, for
Absolutely.
sure. I mean, you look at treatment and the whole industry's moved that way, right?
Right.
It's because mental health up or because insurance isn't paying. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Sure.
We could talk about why, substance use disorders not really, now we're primary mental health.
Right.
Let's treat primary mental health and not look at the substance,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What I mean? Like, I don't, which one comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Sure.
And so, but yeah, it created a lot of mental health stuff, and I'm so grateful that, like, for my first sponsor that was direct, that laid the foundation.
Sure.
This is what we do, right? And then would do it with me
Mhm.
to show me this is what we do.
Yes.
Because the same thing I did 21 years ago is the same thing I did today.
I understand
I
completely.
opened my eyes. I said some prayers. For 10 years, I didn't even believe in God, but I prayed all the time, even though I didn't believe.
Mhm.
And I woke up. I did the prayers. I did some meditation, though I didn't feel that I was connected. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, whoa, you know what I mean? But I took the action. Right? I got on the phone with people, and I started making phone calls and how are you and what's going on in your world? What's same thing I've always done, right? How can I be out of me and into you?
Right.
And I showed up for work and I showed up here because I had a commitment to be here with you. I don't know why God wants me here. I don't know why God wanted me at the marketing event. I don't
Right.
know why, but I make the commitment, I do the things, and I show up in my life.
Right.
And so, um, I didn't experience any mental health stuff from the pandemic. Did I get afraid? Absolutely, I got afraid,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I was like terrified,
I think everybody got
right?
afraid
I
to a
mean,
certain extent.
yeah, I was like, holy
It's
well,
it's amazing. The whole world got afraid. Everybody hid themselves in their houses. Pandemic goes away, and then people start warring again.
meditation is a thing that saved my life during the pandemic.
It was essential, and it was a perfect time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I like, right, and it's weird how it aligned for me because right before the pandemic, I was having a conversation with my friend Erico out of Phoenix, and I was having a hard time with meditation. And no, I was having a hard time. He goes, "What's your meditation life like?" And I was like, "Well, and I told him all the excuses. I don't have the right meditation corner in my room. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I need the right pillow, or do I get the Palo Santo, or do I get the Nag Champa smell?
Yeah.
I got to get this, videotape, or should I watch that YouTube? And
Yeah.
and I don't really have the time to. And he's like, Pat, I'm going to give you permission to be 5 minutes late to anything that you do. And I was like, okay. He's like,
Because you're meditating.
what do you, but I want you to meditate in that 5 minutes. And I was like, but I can't meditate. Like, I'm always thinking, and you know what I mean? I do the breath, but like, I'm a thinker. I have ADHD. And he stopped me. He's like, Pat, he's like, everybody thinks.
Right.
We as human beings are thinkers. And I'm like, do you think? He goes, and I think, look at him as like the Dalai Lama meditation. He's like, well, he floats around in my mind. He's like, Pat, I always think. I go, well, then what do you do? Which, you know what I mean? If you're asking, you're about to start taking some actions, you know what I'm saying? And he goes, Pat, I focus on breath. The thought comes, I tell the thought, I'm letting you go, and then I refocus on breath. And I was like, that's it. He goes, that's it.
That's it.
And I was like, I was stumped, right? It had no, and so I go, okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes. And so, however many months before, I started doing it every day, doing it. And one time I straight fell asleep. I was that at peace that I just everything was all right. Some days I would get like 30 seconds in, thought, discontinue, 10 seconds, thought, You know
Right.
what I mean? And it just was so up and down. But when the pandemic happened and we all got afraid and I was afraid, and all of a sudden I had the thought that came from meditation,
Mm.
discontinue thought, focus on breath, right? Like my meditation moved right into my physical life. The spirit world went right into the physical world. And I fucking knew exactly what to do. And I started breathing.
Wow.
And then I was like, I had the fear come, discontinue thought, focus on breath. Discontinue thought, focus on breath. And what started to come internally in that meditation was all these opportunities that I could be of service.
Mm.
Zoom world, online meetings, connecting the old timers, right? Doing all these things. And all of a sudden, now I have a list of things to do that came spiritually.
Mhm.
Sure enough, what did we start doing? Zoom, all these things, like getting the old timers, got everyone plugged in it. And I walked through fear. You know what I mean? It was like all of a sudden I was back in the spiritual world, which is service. Service connects me to the spiritual world.
Mhm.
And then I got afraid again. And then the thought came, discontinue thought, focus on breath. And I got into meditation, and like what came for me in it all was that like in that meditation I reflected on my whole life. Skid row, no education, got sober, got a little part-time job. This guy asked me to come hang out with his kids at this office. I did. Next thing you know, I'm in a job interview. Now I'm working in treatment. Within 5 years, I was making $100,000 more than I ever made in my whole life, and I lost that job.
Mhm.
And in that meditation, I saw how God got me to that place and how God got me through that hard time.
Mhm.
And then I had a business, and then that partnership fell apart. And I saw how God got brought me here, and I saw that in that darkness, God got me through it. And I realized that God had been molding me
Mm.
to be the man that I stood on that or sitting on my apartment floor in that meditation to truly be the love and the light within that's God centered all the time. And I got off the floor that day and I walked out of my apartment to be the love and the light in this world. And I never looked back at I mean, not at COVID because it was a real thing and people were really having a hard time. But for me personally, I no longer had a hard time with it,
Mhm.
right? It was about how can I help you without judgment, right? Because there was so much judgment at that time, politically, COVID, all that stuff. There was so much judgment, right?
Right.
And that I didn't have to judge you, that I can love you regardless of your beliefs,
Whoever you are.
whoever you are. I didn't have to agree. I didn't have to anything. It didn't matter, right? And so
I love that outlook.
meditation's powerful, powerful. I think it's a hidden gem that around here.
Totally. Breathing especially, man.
Breathing, present.
Well, this has been great. I think about you mentioned that you own the Detox Residential Liberty House, which is out in Redlands, California. Um, I've seen people that have gone through your place, and unlike many others that would worry about scaring a client off by telling them the truth, I've seen the interactions and that you've been direct with love and telling people the truth about themselves, and I appreciate you for being real like that. Really,
Yeah.
it's
Thank you.
not about um, holding on to somebody because of their insurance policy or how much they're paying for the person to be in treatment. It's about letting them know the truth.
That's right.
Like, why don't you get your life together? Why don't you get your life back? You need a reality check.
Right.
Somebody put a mirror in front of us, metaphorically, a mirror in front of us to show us our truth. Now it's time to just give that away, and that's what you keep doing.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, just a little plug, Liberty House Recovery. Lacey Ersich and myself on Liberty House Recovery. And both of us have worked in treatment for 30 plus years together combined,
Mm,
right? And so our heart is helping other people.
absolutely.
And we're there,
I've
Mon-
seen it.
Monday through Friday, we're there. Monday through Thursday, we're there talking to the clients, being present with the clients,
It's got a different
talking
feel,
about
though.
recovery,
Yep.
right? Like guiding them to places that are effective, right? Not just sending somewhere because of a business deal.
Right.
That's not what we're about, right? It's about putting you in the hands of a servant of the spirit world that can continue to guide you to freedom, right? This is about like love. This is about freedom. This is about, I mean, it's like I'm tired of the business world. You know what I mean?
I know you are, and I know that your heart's always been in it, and it will continue to
That's
be.
right.
And anything that's ever been attached to Pato, in my opinion, uh, means that there's goodness coming, like real recovery that's involved.
Right.
And I've always looked up to you in that sense, and that's why everywhere I've worked or everything I've done, you've always been on the forefront of my mind of, well, how would Pat do this? Pat was the one that welcomed you in first. You need to help people like that. Right before the pandemic, there was a series of young Persian kids whose mothers called me. One was he was at Hoag Hospital, second overdose, in a coma, second time. And there was a couple of other ones that God just sprinkled into my life. They were some of the biggest fucking hardheads that I ever could interact with or deal with. They hated my guts. They had a secret text chain about me. The one guy had me in his phone as fuck Pej.
Yeah.
Had me labeled as fuck Pej.
Yeah. I've heard the stories.
And all three of them are sober still.
That's right.
But what's crazy is that even the ones that were sober before them, that were trying to help them, some of those relapsed and died.
That's right.
One of them actually, he relapsed, but before he relapsed, he was so on fire for like sobriety that somebody else had overdosed. And I watched this guy do mouth to mouth resuscitation on his corpse. That's the fucking reality of what we live in. So I understand too, like not getting too close to people or letting only a certain few into my circle. But there's one thing I like, and I'll just end it on this note because we see it all the time. I'm about the miracles. We're about the miracles. We're about seeing people come and find the best versions of themselves when they don't believe in themselves. Right? We're about working on the front lines, seeing a person that appears to be totally broken, but letting them know you're not broken. This is what we do. If you do what we do, you get what we get. That's right. And we're about seeing the lights come on in people's eyes. We see people that feel helpless and hopeless, just like we did in the beginning of our recovery journey, come and get their lives back, their husbands, their wives back, their kids back, their jobs, but most importantly, their recovery. And that's what really matters the most. And I mean, that's why I wanted to have you come down so we could just chop it up and chat about this stuff. I'll do it all the time with you because you're a man of recovery that truly, truly is out there fighting a good fight and being a prime example of what we do. And I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you for having me.
And if you're ever struggling, you can always reach out to me, 310-596-9356. If you want to be on the podcast, we will be having a lot more episodes coming up soon. We got the studio all dialed in. I wanted to get Pato in for this, all the lighting and all the different camera angles and everything.
As you've arrived.
Not even close. But love you all very much. We're going to sign out. Have a good day.